think we're good to go. Great, well, nice to see everybody. Here we are after a pretty busy summer, as we all know, and thank goodness the Olympic Games is over and we can get back to normal. So I thought it was a good idea right now to just take this moment to sort of stock check a little bit about how we've done this summer and where we're going on. But before we do, just quick thank yous. Thank you very much to Sarah and Natalie and the team from Scion for allowing us to be here today, and thank you for that, and also thank you to Full Circle who've as always come to the rescue and delivered us with screens. So thank you very much to that. Phones off, everybody. Can we just make sure we've got phones off? And I probably ought to start with doing that myself. Just for the while we're having a bit of a serious bit. Also, to just general housekeeping, Sarah's insisted I have to say this. In the event of the evacuation, please proceed to the nearest fire exit, which is located through the main front door here. And there are 2 secondary fire exits over here. And you've got to gather at a muster point located in the semicircular lawn outside of Scion House. If that happens, and if that's not available, then the secondary muster point is the main public car park for Scion Park. So, done that. Right, we're going to kick off. Just broadly, what we're going to have here is I'm going to hand over to Andrew Duncan, our interim chief executive. As many of you know who were there at the conference earlier in the year, we decided we took a big decision to make some changes in the business, and that's, I think, very, very exciting. And part of that was bringing in an interim chief executive and a non-executive director to help us and guide us over the next 6 months as we develop the business and look to plan for growth. So I really felt it very important that you hear from Andrew about what that's going to mean for us. So he's going to do that. Then we're going to have a coffee break, and then this afternoon after that we're going to have some team building, which have been organised by EventWise. So always looking forward to that, and that's going to be great fun. Then we're going to be back and have a Q&A. So there's an opportunity for you to ask any questions, anything that comes up as a result of what Andrew says. Please feel free to ask, and we'll have that Q&A. And then, as always, at the end we'll have a great big party tonight, and I look forward to that very much as a way of sort of celebrating the end of the summer. So that's it from me. You'll be pleased to hear. I'm now going to hand over to our new interim chief executive, Andrew Duncan.
Thanks, Suzanne. First thing is, I've been known to go on for hours with one of these without realising that it was on or off. There was one event where it was actually off, and I prattled on for an hour, and everybody gave me a large round of applause, and afterwards someone came up to me and said, what were you talking about? We couldn't hear a damn thing, but that was for our benefit. First, to reiterate, Mike, many thanks for you all coming today. I know we are missing a couple, but I think there's a fairly good turnout. I'm going to lead you through a presentation, which isn't normally my bag. I normally don't do presentations. I normally prefer action. But we're going to run through a few slides here, and we will wrap it up with a Q&A, as Mike said at the end. In the coffee break, I believe, Harriet, there's a whole bunch of pads or pieces of paper to write down questions. So for those of you who are bold enough, please stand up at that point and ask them. For those of you who aren't or don't want to stand up, just fill out a question on one of those sheets, and I'll do my best to answer them with both Mike and the rest of the team. The only caveat I put on that, be careful what you ask, because I will give you the answer. So just bear that one in mind. All right, let's see if we can drive. First of all, I thought it'd be a good idea to explain who on earth we are, because there are two of us. My name's Andrew Duncan. As Mike said, I am the interim chief exec. Give you a bit of flavour. There are some of you who'd probably say, well, he's another consultant. I can guarantee you I'm not a consultant. I've been a consultant in my past, where I did used to make a lot of presentations and put together a lot of packs of slides and such. That is not what I do anymore. We actually do real work. And real work means rolling up your sleeves and actually getting on with it. Since I've started, I don't know how many presentations I've put together, but I think it's quite a round number. But Newmarket, the place I work, is very much into taking the reins and working with teams to actually generate meaningful and hopefully and often impressive results. I am a massive team person, and I've had a lot of people go, oh, here we go, it's summer doodah. There's going to be a big talk about teamwork and coming together as a team and feeling team-enabled and team-empowered. This isn't just talk for me. I am absolutely a team person. A couple of you have seen what happens to me when I don't see teamwork exhibited in front of me. It's not a pleasant sight. And a big part of the message today is team, but I don't know what has transpired in the past. I'm not overly interested in it, to be honest. I'm very much about this team, which I do believe has immense and very impressive creative ability and delivery ability to really start functioning as a team. There are pockets of you so far I've started working with in that regard. I intend to work with a lot more of you in that regard to really come about and realise the full potential of this group that I think can only be released with true teamwork. As I said, I work for a company called New Market Partners. We are what is known as situational managers or situational specialists. And what that basically means in English is we don't get involved with anything or anybody unless we can define a situation. The situation here, as I'll explain in a minute, is about growth, efficiency, and getting ready for the future. Situations can also range from companies in stress, companies who want to grow, companies who want to change their ownership, but there is typically a situation that is defined, and we are brought in to deal with those situations specifically. And when we've dealt with those situations, we then either will leave directly, or we may have an ongoing role, typically in a non-exec position, which I'll explain to you in a minute. One of the other things which you should all know about New Market Partners, and particularly myself and Richard, is we don't get involved in losing causes. A lot of people say, oh, you're the people who get involved last minute, someone's gone into administration or is going bankrupt or insolvent. That is a very well publicised part of turnaround and the restructuring market, but it is not all of it. In fact, it's a long way short of all of it. A huge amount of turnaround and restructuring type work actually goes on with companies that are very helpful. Very healthy, and those which have a very bright future. Things I've done in the past, there's a client which actually is still a client called the Jockey Club. You may have read in the press many years ago they decided to raise a very impressive amount of debt actually, without actually understanding what it meant in terms of being able to pay the interest payment on that debt. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Jockey Club is a Queen's Trust, and Queen's Trust typically don't go into administration very often because that could be embarrassing to one particularly prominent person in our community. We were brought in essentially just to bring a sense of pragmatism and realism to the Jockey Club, so they actually did meet up front their rent obligations and then further looked at the Jockey Club in whole as to how it was operating, and really came a lot more together as a club than it used to be. And you could have seen some of that in the press recently. There are some big moves taking place in the Jockey Club in terms of how they run, and funnily enough it comes a lot down to that word I'd mentioned before, teamwork, with a capital T-E-A-M. So the Jockey Club no longer runs its race courses as individual race courses. It runs them as collections of race courses, and thereby really harnesses the full power of the Jockey Club as it delivers what we believe is an improving, not yet perfect, but definitely an improving experience to their punters. I also have set up my own business in the past. It was called The Joined. We built it, I think it started in March 2000. We built it up to a team of about 600 people in 2005. We sold it to a NASDAQ-listed company for $165 million in 2005. We then restructured that business, the one that bought us, and we sold the restructured company over to Capgemini for $1.2 billion in 2006. So I take the restructuring thing fairly seriously. I'm not a big egotistical man, but I do believe I actually know what I'm doing. And it's not so much coming up with magic recipes or secret sauces. It actually, a lot of the time, comes down to common sense, pragmatism, and that other word again, teamwork. I've also worked with the likes of Nokia Siemens. That was an interesting one several years ago when Nokia and Siemens decided to enter a joint venture. They did so with a lot of gusto, a lot of PR, a lot of media, to basically put together telephone switching gear and solutions for the world. The only problem is they forgot to tell the people actually involved in the joint venture that it actually was a single company and not two separate companies. And so there again, we went in and really brought in a spirit of teamwork and awareness as the fact that, yes, you may be from Nokia Nokia, or you may be from Siemens, but at the end of the day, unless you start acting as though you're Nokia Siemens, that is one unit, you're not going to be successful. And I'll let the results speak for themselves there, although they still go through a fair amount of reorganization. Gulf Bank was an interesting one. That was a bank which literally on the eve of the financial crisis was involved. It's essentially a regional Gulf bank. They operate out of Kuwait. They run essentially what used to be, we all knew as high street banks, retail banks, lending money, taking people's money, looking after it sensibly. And this bank, not unlike a lot of other banks, decided that they wanted to get into credit swap derivatives and other fancy financial instruments with very strange names like double snowballing Black Death. And you're going, why on earth would anybody get into a derivative called that? Anyway, they did. They got into 8 of them. The financial crisis happened, and it bankrupted the bank in 4 days. We went in to basically recapitalize the bank, which we did. The bank is now a very healthy regional bank in the Gulf again. Probably the most meaningful or memorable thing out of that experience outside of turning around the bank was I was living in the Marriott for about 5 months. To get into the hotel, we had to go through some fairly impressive sized tank traps. They searched every single piece of you and anything you were carrying going in and out of the hotel, which is an eye-opener, but it really was topped by the fact my room overlooked a graveyard, which they actually hadn't filled in the graves yet, though the graves were occupied. So it was a bit of a stark sort of reality check that in fact, yes, Kuwait was rebounding, but it was still very much coming out of a fairly tough time. And in fact, even today, there are still some parts of Kuwait which are still fairly rough and ready. But anyway, the common thing with all those examples I've just given you is they are all successful entities. They've gone through a share of distress or a requirement to do something different, but every one of them today is very much alive and well. Other information about me, I am 46, which I point out to Sam on a weekly basis as younger than he is, though unfortunately I don't use hair dye, so I've gone grey. I live in Yorkshire. I'm married to Barbara, my beautiful wife, who is actually called Barbara, not Bear Bray. That is the Celtic spelling of Barbara, for those of you who are interested. And I support 5 children, which is quite expensive. I play golf badly, so I haven't actually taken Mike up on any invitation because it would be acutely embarrassing to him if I did. I do like sport fishing. I do fishing in general, but I do like fishing for strange things. Fly fishing for sharks is one of my favourite, and people go, you must be crazy, A, fishing for a shark, but B, doing it with a fly, but I actually do enjoy it. It takes you to some very interesting parts of the world, and it is certainly an adrenaline fix when you get one on a fly line, I can assure you. I'm also a Churchill enthusiast, but more of that later. Richard Dodd. Richard, do you want to stand up for a second? Aldi over there. Richard is probably professionally characterised as he definitely likes to make things happen, and I work with him at Newmarket, and he is definitely part of the engine at Newmarket that really does make us happen and keep us all honest. He also likes a difficult challenge, which at times he says is Newmarket, but he and I work very closely together with our clients, dealing with challenges and really driving to solutions. His history is he used to, in his former life, run a very large part of cable and wireless, which sounds very impressive, and then you realise it was in the Caribbean, so you think there could have been an ulterior motive there. But he is used to running very large, complex businesses, very political businesses, very incongruent businesses. He's got a passion for services, and what we mean by that is customer-facing businesses, and everything he does is obsessed with the customer experience, which is good for the Concerto Group, but obviously in a lot of other clients, such as the Jockey Club, where the experience is first and foremost. He does not like inefficiency, and our new board, and I'll talk about the new board in a minute, but they've experienced that firsthand, and he certainly doesn't put up with a lot of corporate nonsense that we've tried to introduce from time to time and has been battered down harshly within a matter of minutes. Other information, he lives in Bitersia, has 4 children, one of whom is actually a very talented artist. His passions involve cricket, large motorbikes, and he does have a large motorbike, hill walking, more cricket, Scotland, cooking, contemporary art, and more cricket. In fact, everything he does obsesses around cricket, but there are a few cricket analogies, but he has been to quite a lot of cricket, I understand. Favourite quote, and there will be a few more quotes through this presentation, but for those of you who can't remember the past, I'm condemned to repeat it. I think there's a fair amount of sage wisdom in there. So before I go too much further, let's get down to some business. The financial summary for where we are. The first quarter has exceeded target. Very good. The second quarter, we are well below target. Obviously, some fairly straightforward reasons to that. The cannibalization, that I call it, of the corporates, traditional corporate summer business, and also some of our loss-making experiences with some of the Olympic venues. More of that in a minute. Overall, basically to the end of August, we're about 700,000 to 800,000 behind budget in context of full-year PBT, where the target, I think, is about 1.6 million. Which is quite a gap. On the good news, the third quarter, we're well up on last year. It's looking quite good. We've definitely got a potential to hit target and probably go a fair amount beyond it. So although we've had that lull through the Olympic period, I think the third quarter is looking quite strong. But as always, as I've learnt in this business, the fourth quarter is where it's made and lost. And that is no different this year than it has been in years past. So it is all to run for. It's all to go and get. As a team, I think we can get it. I've told many of you that, in my opinion and Rich's opinion, we don't look at things as, oh, there's something interesting going on there, we need to cut our way out of it. We are very much of the school that we need to sell our way out of it. And I think for those of you I've worked with directly so far, there's hopefully you all are believing that I actually believe that. Down to the soles of my feet, that I do believe that while it is very tempting to cut, if we can sell our way out of this business, we'll feel better about ourselves, we'll have a better product, we'll have happier customers, and therefore we'll have a better company. So the Olympics, I've heard a lot of sort of corridor chat, water cooler chat, more like coffee pot chat about the Olympics, and with quite a lot of focus on what didn't go well, less focus on what has gone well. But at the end of the day, be under no misunderstanding, we have made quite a lot of money out of the Olympics. Yes, part of it is in a trade-off for our traditional summer business, but 1.2 million of GEM is nothing to be sneezed at. That number is being confirmed as we speak, but it is a decent number and it's one to be proud of. We had a lot of goods. I mean, a lot of very good things happened within the Olympics. We had some not so goods, which I actually, my view, and I've told Philip, who I'll mention in a minute, who's doing a survey around what we have done in the Olympics. I look at the not so goods as real learning opportunities. We took on a hell of a lot of new concepts throughout the Olympics and indeed throughout this summer, both retail-oriented, public catering, dealing with Africans and their view on economies and finance, dealing with Russians and our preservation of kneecaps, a whole variety of different customers, a bit out of the norm for the Concerto group. And all in all, I'd say we actually came through it reasonably well, though we do have quite a lot of learning to do from those experiences. And I've asked Philip, who's basically undertaking a very objective look at what we did over the summer, the Olympics, and indeed slightly broader of it, but primarily the Olympics, to really get into what did we do well and what did we learn from it, and what did we not do so well and what have we learned from it. And not with a view to just apply it to the next Olympics, be it winter or summer, but really to apply it in broad terms to this business as a whole. Because I think the Olympics brought out good and badness, and I think if we can address both the learnings of the good and the bad, we will be a better business at the end of it. So Philip, if he hasn't been in contact with you directly, he may be. If he does, please be very open with him and very forthright, because the more open we are and more honest we are about ourselves and what we have done well or not so well, the more productive it is going to be for us as a business. So, why are we all here? Why are we embarking on all this change? What's caused it? Are we in deep you-know-what? Well, basically, the group was put together in '99, and you've experienced an enormous amount of success since then, and you indeed still continue to experience a fair amount of success. The challenge we have is essentially to face up to the current economic times, and I'm not talking about periods of growth or recession so much. I'm talking about a fundamental change in economies, particularly as things get more digital, things get a lot more dynamic, a lot more nimble, a lot more flexible. People react a lot quicker, and we as an organisation and a group have to embrace that change, the fundamental change in our economy, in addition to hopefully weathering storms such as we're in today, be it double, triple, I can't remember what the latest financial descriptor of our current economic state is. It doesn't sound particularly pretty. But my message to you, and I think our message to each other should be, it doesn't matter. We are fundamentally a very sound business. We can take it all on. It's a question of how do we take the most opportunity we can out of today's situation and equip ourselves for the future. The other big part of this is making sure we continue to grow. Concerto Group is an interesting anomaly in that most private businesses typically will hit a threshold or a ceiling, as it's called, somewhere around the 10 million mark. And I'm being very generalistic, and I'm not intending to be, but most private businesses, as they set up in their early stages, will sort of do whatever. Everybody will roll up their sleeves and get into it. But as you get bigger, by default, you have to start delegating out responsibility and operational challenges and such, and by osmosis, most companies will hit this ceiling at 10 million, which is very hard to penetrate and get through. Concerto Group, which you can all give yourselves a pat on the back for, has actually managed not only to get through 10, but 20 and 30 million before getting to a point where you realise that something different is needed in order to address future growth. It would be very hard indeed, I think, to grow much beyond 30 or 40 million as you're structured today. The shareholders recognise that, the board and executive team recognise that, and I'll come to that in a second. So a big part of what this is about is not going the, holy crap, we're in a pile of kimchi here. It's actually, how can we actually get better at what we're doing, prepare ourselves better for the future, both in terms of what the economy represents, but also allowing us to grow as a business. And that is a big part of why we are here. Earlier this year, as Mike mentioned, following the early summer get-together, the decision was taken by the shareholders really to address three things: the governance structure of the business, and I'll talk about that in a minute, efficiency within the business. I think all of you would realise that there's been a lot of siloed operations and not a lot of sort of group-level operations, and there is a big belief, and I think a strong hypothesis, to say that as you function more and more as a group and you actually gain not only economies of scale but leverage of all the intellect and creativity that's encapsulated within the group, you could do an enormous amount more, probably with not an overly big, much bigger team. And the last one I've already mentioned is growth of the business. And Newmarket Partners, mine and Richard's business, was asked to come in and participate to lead this challenge. So what was the first thing we addressed? Well, again, with that 10 million ceiling, a lot of times we see with private businesses, and really it's not a hangover as such, but it's a product of an early stage business. You will typically see situations where the shareholders are also the board and are also the executive management team of the company. And that's all fine and well when you're small, but as you get bigger, that leads to issues and problems. And I'm not just talking sort of personal issues that you may have with one another, but more ongoing management issues where decisions have to be taken, the company needs to rally behind and such. So Richard and I took the shareholders and the board through an exercise where we actually separated out the three entities. And so now in the Concerto Group today, we have a set of shareholders who are still the shareholders. Those shareholders have elected the board of directors, of which there are 5, myself, Richard, Mike, Sam and Mark. And that board of directors has appointed an executive, primarily myself, for the moment. And there's very big differences. The shareholders elect the board, who appoint the executive, and it's the executive who run the business. I or any of the executive don't go running back to shareholders when we need to do something. In the old model, where everybody was together by default, not necessarily by good or bad reasons, but by default, all the shareholders and the board and the executive were involved in every decision. And that is going to bog down at some point. In splitting them, and so you're having 3 separate entities where if the shareholders want to make a change, they'll make it at the board level. If the board wants to make a change, they'll make it at the executive level. But having each entity very different, with very different responsibilities, we believe has actually facilitated decision making within the business. And I think probably most of you at this point have realised that decisions are being taken, and they're being taken and followed up and actioned very quickly. A lot quicker than used to happen when I initially got involved with Richard several months ago, and it is going to accelerate. So, but it could not accelerate if we maintained the old structure. So change number one, you talk about leading from the top. Your shareholders, your former directors, and the executive made a very bold decision, putting a lot of trust in the process, but they were the first to sign up for the change agenda, which they did, and this is now the structure of the company as we go forward. If you look at an entertainment business, and again, I don't want to be too general here, but there are some common features of successful entertainment businesses. Venues, ideally iconic. Events, hopefully fantastic. Catering, well, obviously excellent and high quality. And operations, ideally flawless. If you have those four pillars, that's absolutely fantastic. But if you're not marketing them properly, yes, you may be successful, but you're leaving so much untapped potential on the table. Now, I'm not having a go at Michelle and the team here. In fact, quite the contrary. I think what Michelle and the team have done in marketing so far is extraordinary. What I'm saying is that if we actually bring in additional marketing talent that has lived and breathed marketing for most of their lives, that has experienced marketing within other communities, other industries, and indeed within our own sector, and couple them with the marketing team we currently have, I strongly believe we will make a seismic difference in how we're perceived in the marketplace. It will also make a seismic difference in terms of how successful our salespeople can be. If you ask a salesperson to sell, by default they will do their job and they will sell. But if you couple them with a well-oiled, well-integrated marketing engine that is addressing each of those four pillars, iconic venues, fantastic events, excellent catering and flawless operations, the results will be quite dramatic. Now, some of you have said, yeah, well, it's all very well talk about it, it's hard to implement. You're absolutely right, it's a nightmare to implement. But we are going to implement it, and it's a big part of why I believe very strongly that this group has huge potential to lift sales dramatically without actually changing the sort of the raw numbers of the group in a proportionate manner. You've got the creative talent in this business. You've got the executional talent in this business. The one thing which has been lacking, I believe, is marketing. And again, it is not because Michelle has been doing a bad job with her team. It is because we need to give Michelle's team a serious steroid injection and really bring in some industry-proven and very capable marketing talent to couple with the talent we already have. And then really harness the power of this organization and start telling the market about it and letting our sales team know how to sell it properly. And that in itself, as I say, will yield some pretty dramatic results. So where is this change happening? Well, very much in line with that, we are coming up, or basically putting together a formal team called Business Development that has numerous hats. The first one is sales, and a lot of you have probably seen Ansel walking the halls, pestering you, filling up an email box, demanding you show up to meetings or whatever. He has my unequivocal support in doing that and being as much of a pain in the you-know-what as he needs to be to make sure he gets what he wants. What we are looking to do in sales is standardize, where it makes sense, our sales processes, to train all the people in sales to become better at their jobs, and to be able to manage themselves and manage their colleagues within a sales team to deliver superior results. You can't get there through osmosis or evolution. That needs leadership. And what I've asked Ansel to do with the executive team and the board is to help us put that leadership in place. But be very clear, we are going to get to a more standardized and rigorous sales function and responsibility, which is going to include sales management, and it is going to include measurement across the entire group. Now, I know that each brand has its idiosyncrasies, and I'm not saying we're going to marginalize that. What I am saying is we're going to get to a core standard set of processes, which may be bespoke depending on what brands we're selling in to some degree, but fundamentally that sales process will be the same across all the groups. Everyone will be managed, everyone will be measured. A fundamental difference from certainly what I've seen to date. And Ansel, I thank you for the efforts you've put in, and indeed all of you for cooperating with Ansel, because he can be quite hard-nosed from time to time. But I am seeing the differences, and we are about to start putting a lot of what you and Ansel and the team have been putting together over the summer into motion. But it will be done under this umbrella of business development. I've been harping on about marketing. We are going to be appointing a group marketing director. That marketing director will probably come on board in a formal manner at some point next year. In the meantime, there'll be an individual who's hopefully going to join us in the next couple of weeks, more on a consulting basis, to really lift some of the short-term or support some of the short-term marketing requirement, particularly in digital and particularly around the market perception of the Concerto Group and its capabilities. I'm just going to pop back into sales. I skipped over a couple of points, and for that I apologise. Back in sales, we are going to move to centralised account management. Very, very important. This isn't account management within a brand or division. This is account management being managed at the group level. It is identifying accounts that we are going to put under an account management umbrella at the group level, and making sure that as inquiries come in for those accounts, we bring absolutely the best we can to bear in every circumstance and every interaction we have with that account. We're not going to do it unilaterally at the start. We are going to pick certain accounts, and we're going to appoint account managers to carry out that undertaking. We're going to retask central sales. Some of you may think that's already happened. It has to some degree, but it is a short-term, it's not even a fix, it's a positioning of the central sales team, who very kindly agreed to go and merge with the UE for the balance of the year to make sure we deliver a spectacular Christmas, both in terms of sales and obviously operation. And so they have moved over to ABC One, working with Biff's team. And in fact, certainly from what I heard on Friday last week, the impact of that is already being felt. So that seems to be going well. But in terms of the future, central sales will continue to be a group function. It will continue to address specialist parts of our market, associations, charities, societies, clubs, etc., which all take a certain type of relationship and a certain type of approach. But like everybody else in sales, they will be following certain processes, they will be managed, and they will have targets. And we're looking to get to group sales management. What that means is really several things. We're looking at making sure that sales is undertaken within the group in a structured manner. Cynically, you could look at it and say, well, that's the sales police, and you'd be right. That person or persons will be responsible for making sure that we field inquiries properly, appropriately, consistently, to the best of our ability to deliver the best product we can at the best possible price for the best experience to every single potential client or current client that we have. And that if we leave that within the divisions, I'm sure each division would do the best they can. But as I've seen in being your interim CEO for a few months, there is so much that all of you can bring to a lot more opportunities than you do today, by breaking down some of the barriers between divisions and actually working more as a team and bringing what you're all good at to bear on a particular opportunity. I know it. I've seen it time and time again. And I'm beginning to sense change, but there is still a long way to go. And for that change to embed itself is going to require some degree of leadership. There's a board meeting on Thursday where we'll be talking about this in more detailed terms. There may be an appointment that comes out of this of a sales director flavour, but that's very much a work in motion. But that is sales. I mentioned marketing. There are two other areas that we intend to spend a lot of time on. One is venue development. It's all very well looking at our portfolio and saying, yes, well, that's great, what's next? Can we go get another one? But this is not so much about getting the next one, it's actually going to get the next exciting one. It may be going slightly different, a bit off-piste, if you will, but it's looking for a venue that can be truly iconic or market-leading, something that other people may look at us and go, bloody hell, I wasn't expecting that. Something just got a little twist where it allows us to get a bit of an edge, which when we couple with product development, which again is looking to the future, looking over the horizon and saying, what should we be doing next? What is the next mousetrap, to use the overused cliche? But it's instead of following everybody else and this one's a bit of an old one, but putting on a poker party because everybody else is doing it at the moment, or doing a masquerade ball because everybody else is doing it, it's actually getting ahead of the curve and thinking about what could we do with all our creative energy. What could we do which is interesting, can provide a very interesting experience for our customer base? I'd even go and push it out a bit, create an incredible experience for our customer base so that they actually start raving about it and everybody else in our industry is playing catch up with us. What I'm talking about, let's put it in context. Let's take Deloitte Consulting, a good client. They've been a good client of ours for several years. They spend a fair amount of money. So your person from Deloitte goes back after their Christmas party and they go back into the office and they see a mate of theirs that day and they go, well, so you went to a Christmas party at such and such last week, how was it? Yeah, it was okay. I mean, it's a Christmas party, a few people got a bit overserved, nice food, bit of dancing, threw a few shapes, and yeah, came home. That was it. It says, and so the Deloitte Christmas party happens, and after that, someone goes back to the office and says, well, how was it? And you go, usual stuff, sort of ate a bit of food, bit overserved, threw a few shapes, standard Christmas party. And the Deloitte person says, no. What I went to was absolutely spectacular, something I was not anticipating. Amazing food, incredible production, amazing atmosphere. Went on, we were basically thrown out, otherwise it had gone on for 2 days. That's the sort of thing I'm talking about. Because if that happens, when that Deloitte guy goes back in to see his mates over Christmas, they all start talking about what did you do, your corporate Christmas party or whatever, instead of having the same old banquet beef and a bit of disco and some cheap beer, it was bloody hell, we actually, that was impressive. Well, what do you mean? Well, they did this and this. And what level of marketing is that? That's what I'm talking about. It's creating something a bit different, not for the sake of being different, but actually doing what I know we all can do and do very well. But it's collectively coming together and thinking about what is that product, where can it be delivered, and how do we put on the most incredible experiences we can for our customers. If we can do that, half the marketing challenge is solved. Where else is change happening? Bit of rumour control here. Yes, we are in the process of identifying a new chief executive, my successor. The time frame for that initially, and is still the target, is the end of the year. Interviews are going on at the moment. They will continue to go on for several weeks. But be under no misunderstanding, there will be a new chief executive in my place this time next summer. Teamwork, and I know we get into the, here it goes, teamwork. I've heard this just about every get-together. We are taking teamwork very seriously, and I take it very seriously. For the people in events, Biff, Sarah, Joe and Guy, just prior to this we had another events meeting where we are looking at not tackling the market as our three separate brands necessarily, but tackling the market as one Concerto events team and what is needed to actually drive that. How do we need to restructure how we go to market as events to make that happen? And that is not saying we're all going to become Concerto and we're going to throw the brands out of the window. Quite the contrary, it's saying no, we're allowed to keep the brands and we're allowed to maintain that differentiation. But what are things we can do better, differently, in a more cohesive manner, which will help improve and even put on steroids the experience we provide to the marketplace? One of which is operations, centralized operations. I'd say a large proportion of what we do in operations can be applied across whatever brand. It's still an event. Yes, there are edgy bits of it which may need to be bespoke or put through one of the unique brands through which the event was sold, but fundamentally there's a core of what we do can be replicated irrespective of what brand it was sold under. So we're looking at what pieces of the events parts of Concerto can we pull together and put our eggs in one basket while still maintaining sort of the identity of the brands themselves. Very much a work in motion. But the thing I'm delighted about is we've got the three events businesses under Concerto events today all talking to each other, trying to address that challenge. So that's step one. I've asked Sam and others to lead it in catering as well. But if we take what's going on within UE at a pure brand level, which I know Biff's driving quite hard at the moment in terms of bringing together the team, particularly as Central comes in, broadening it out into what we can do as events, and hopefully broadening it out between the events division but also to the catering division or divisions, and then even going further and broadening it out into support, broadening it out into how we approach business development, underpinning it with proper marketing, more directed focused sales. Again, the results are going to be spectacular, but it's not going to happen without teamwork. We are engaged in a variety of infrastructure projects. Obviously, simplifying our infrastructure is a minute-by-minute, day-to-day, week-to-week, weekend-to-weekend adventure for Philip and his team, for which we are very, very thankful. Not the easiest thing to do by any stretch, particularly as you're trying to move infrastructure that has been laid down for many years in a certain format. It all looks very straightforward on paper. In execution, it is a complete nightmare. So thanks to Philip and his team for that. There's been an enormous amount of rumour about closing offices, opening offices, and all the rest of it. I can look you all dead in the eye today and say that no decision has been taken to close any office anywhere in the group, and won't be this year. That is not to say that as we look into next year and beyond, there may not be some consolidation. But I've heard people saying, oh, we're closing Rossway in 2 weeks. It's absolute rubbish. We're not closing anything in the foreseeable future. No decisions have been taken. We've had one light and polite conversation about it at board level, and that is it, light and polite. So I need to, for those who are talking or worried, there is nothing going to happen, certainly for the balance of the year. And even if we were to make a decision in January, consolidation of any type of office space tends to take a lot of time, not to mention all that nasty infrastructure that needs to support it needs to be ported over to that new physical footprint. And that, as I've just mentioned, is something which is quite complicated and also takes time. So I can't tell you that it won't happen, but I can tell you it isn't happening in the short term. So for all of you who think that Rossway is going to be gone by October, I can tell you categorically and look you dead in the eye, it is not. It is not going to be gone in November or December either. So what I would ask you to do is move on, assume it is business as usual, and at any time that changes, we will inform you. And it's a big part of what I want you to take out of today's discussion is we are very open and honest, as it started off as in the last get-together, where they're very forthright about the process going forward. There is no point in treating you all as sort of as they call mushroom theory, just putting you in a dark room under a mushroom. That's not going to work. We need everybody to be informed, feel empowered, feel part of this change, feel part of the team doing it, and only by that way will we get the results. More rumour control, purchasing, we are looking at, and several of you have experienced, we are looking at across the group about what we buy and who we buy it from. We are looking at consolidating purchasing to some degree, looking at more broader and enforced contract buying. And this isn't because there's going to be a whole bunch of purchasing police people out there, and there needs to be. It's more about recognising our purchasing power in the marketplace and leveraging that to the absolute maximum we can to drive the best price and all the indirect benefit of contract buying. And what I mean by indirect benefit, for those of you who aren't on that front line, is as we go about spending, say, 100,000 quid on, I don't know, camera equipment, there will be a supplier out there who will not only give us a decent price on our £100,000 of camera hire, but will also give us a rebate if we start extending beyond original terms or even deliver on original terms. And that rebate is real cash to this business. And what that means is straight to the bottom line. That's PBT. So what we are looking at doing is looking broadly across where we spend money today and identifying opportunities that we have to actually consolidate our buying power with select suppliers so we can deliver a better price and benefit directly from the indirect benefits of consolidating supply with those suppliers. Now, some of you delivering events may go, oh, bloody hell, it's the last thing I need, because if I need a bottle of champagne last minute, I need to get that bottle of champagne. Haven't got time to call Central for them to order it to figure out that next Tuesday may be too late. We understand all that, and there still has to be flexibility in that model. But I would put to you on that same bottle of champagne that if we actually looked at it as a group, approached it and understood that yes, we need 20 cases of ordinary champagne and 5 cases of premium champagne, we actually, if we'd thought about it, can get to that understanding where we can before the event, make the purchase under a contract, and yes, if we then have to go buy 2 bottles of 1982 Crew because someone's prepared to pay for them, and I do stress pay for them, then fine, you can walk down to wherever and get it. But fundamentally, the majority of our purchasing should be done on our large ticket items under contract, so our large volume items under contract, and that is what this is all about. In HR, I've heard a lot of rumours on this one as well. We're all signing contracts. So why are we signing these contracts? Why do you want my passport? Blah, blah, blah. Well, there's a whole bunch of things there. HR, we have to meet certain standards, not because we want to do it as a concerto, but we have to meet certain standards as a matter of law. We have to be able to prove on a spot inspection that everybody in the concerto group has the ability and is authorised and legal to work within the European Union. There's only one way to do that, and it's actually to look at and have identification for everybody on our payroll at hand if we were to be audited in that manner. And that varies from a variety of identification documents, but the easiest is a passport. So there's no undercover stealthy thing going on about sort of why we've all asked for your passports. It's plain and simple. We have to bring our HR department up to a point where we would pass an HR audit from the government. And that is proving that you can all work. It is defining the terms of which you are working. It's also allowing you to know what exactly am I meant to be doing. Hopefully you all know what you're meant to be doing, but it's formalising job descriptions, it's formalising how you're going to be paid, it's formalising how you're going to be incented, it's going to be formalising how you're going to be managed. So there's a whole bunch of benefits to all of you as a result of this standardisation, not just bureaucratic requirements from the government. That is what this first step is about. And I know Tina has been driving around, I know Mark and Sam have been helping her and others, but we've got to bring our HR footprint up to a standard and as fast as we can. I think from the report I saw this morning, we are almost there. Not quite, but we're almost there. Once we've got everybody sort of to a contract and having got them identified, we are going to move towards a standardised HR contract where it makes sense. So again, very similar to sales, there will be a standard contract which will be tweaked as necessary for certain bespoke situations, but it will not be tweaking the contract because Jo wants to be able to bring her Jack Terrier into work every lunch and we have to provide that sort of thing's nonsense. The more exceptions we provide to any contract, be it HR, be it sales, be it purchasing, the harder it is to manage. And the harder it is to manage, the more expensive it is to manage and the less efficient we become as a business. But we're not all robots, so you can't just be generalist and have one standard contract across everything. We understand that on a variety of fronts. But there is a point where you say, yes, we do need a base, and then we adjust where it makes sense accordingly. And that is what we're striving for. In finance, we are, not easily, but we are striving for simplification of the financial management reporting suite. Aren't we, Mr. Greaves? Where is he? Oh, there he is. This isn't easy. Again, a lot of legacy issues. Our systems are recorded in multiple instances. We have, I think it was 7 instances of Sage that we counted up last week. We have a BMS system which is very bespoke, doing some phenomenal things for us, but being asked to do more and more phenomenal things almost on a daily basis. And that, again, is breeding an enormous amount of inefficiency. We are not looking to dive into IT and sort IT out anytime soon, but we are looking to try and use what we have in as simple a manner as possible to get us the results and the output that we want. We're also appointing a financial controller. Mark and I are in interviews, I believe, at the end of the week. We've got 2 or 3 we're seeing. But again, I mean, as probably a lot of you are aware, Mark has been on the front line for many years. And as part of this change, we're introducing a controller who can actually take a lot of the heavy lifting off Mark to allow him to get involved in a lot more of the strategic items around a finance department, of which there are many going forward. So what does all this mean in a picture? Well, you've got the Concerto Group at the top, and I'm a big supporter and believer that that brand, that Concerto Group, has immense power. And it has immense power because of all the entities underneath it. But as we look underneath it, we do need to bring some semblance of logical structure to what sits underneath it. And I see Carly's squinting badly. I will shoot this presentation out as I think the screens will be a tad bigger, but I'll run through it. Essentially, there are 4 main areas of the Concerto Group. The first one is the events businesses. Obviously, Ultimate Experience, Mask, and Event-wise. There is the catering businesses, Create and Touch of Taste. Those businesses work with both our traditional venues and indeed our ad hoc venues. So you've got events and catering and the venues working in concert, like that, working in concert with each other to deliver our events. We have a business operations leg, which obviously includes finance, HR, the whole infrastructure and IT side, and will almost certainly involve some level of...
Sorry to interrupt. I just need to make an announcement.
Sure. Sorry.
If I can just have your attention, please. We need to leave the venue, so if you could please all make your way to the nearest fire exits. They're marked by everyone in stewards in high visibility jackets, and they can direct you to the point of safety, which will be outside Scion House. Thank you.